What's up, guys? Wade Willis here for my playthrough of Umineko. I'm in episode 4, and this is going to be part 5. The last episode we really got to see deep into Maria's psyche, where, she's not had a very good life, that's for sure, and she's kind of like looking at things, looking at a glass half full. And Ange looks at things kind of the opposite way, so it's interesting. Having both of them involved in this story and just seeing the goodness in Maria's heart, trying to find the good in her life that is really not that great. And then obviously Sakutaro was turned into a human from a stuffed animal. I mean, that was pretty wild. I did not see that coming. And yeah, guys, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for tons of other When They Cry content. And yeah, if you like the video, share it on social media or something as well too. I'd appreciate it.
とても可愛らしい姿ですよ、サク太郎ちゃん。マフラーがチャームポイントだと思ってな。あとは耳だ。獣耳はいいぞ。実に可愛い。後でわらわにもかじらせよ。
Yeah, they dialed up Sakutaro's cuteness to an 11 out of 10 here.
ありがとう、ベアトリーチェ。素敵なプレゼントを本当にありがとう。
礼には及ばぬ。そなたの素晴らしき魔法と友人に敬意を表したまでよ。そしてこの域にまで達したそなたはもはや見習いをいつ卒業してもおかしくない。
And so you guys who have been subscribed and following me going through this game, I'm very on edge for this episode right now, or chapter or whatever. Because everyone's saying they don't like what's gonna happen, so I'm like, I'm ready for something horrible to happen.
これより原初の魔女見習いのマリアと名乗るがよい。
原初の魔女って？
うん。造物種の道を求める魔女の称号よ。今は身の回りの小物に魔力を吹き込む力しか持たぬエンチャンターでしかない。しかし1000年の修行を経たならば、その胸の内より魔法体系はおろか、銀河を生み出すことも夢ではあるまい。
The whole galaxy is a bit excessive.
原初の魔女の才能はとても希少。幼き日には誰もが持つのに誰も持ち続けることができない。この称号はあなたが汚れなき心を失わなかったことの証でもありますね。
原初の魔女すごい。なる。マリア、原初の魔女見習い。マリア、すごいね、すごいね。原初の魔女、すごいすごい。うりゅう。
やがては一人前の原初の魔女マリア卿を名乗ることになろう。サク太郎だけでなく、そろそろそなたもその格にふさわしい身なりをしても良い頃であろうな。それ、見習いとはいえ魔女の名を語るにふさわしき服装を与えよう。
When Beto waved the pipe that was her cane, many gold butterflies that appeared out of nowhere grouped around Maria, giving her a wonderful dress. Oh! It was certainly fitting for the girl who would eventually take the name Witch of Origins, combining with both cuteness and dignity.
すごい！すごいすごいすごいすごい！かわいいかわいい！このお洋服、ママにも見せたい。ダメ？
魔女の清掃はみだりに見せてはならぬぞ。 もったいぶった方が価値が出るというもの。
Then the great witch, the witch's apprentice, and their new friend Sakutaro enjoyed a lively tea party.
ね、私はこんなにも幸せだよ。そしてこんなにも楽しい。幸せになることをどうか恐れないで。幸せになるというのは今の不幸を受け入れるという意味じゃないの。今の不幸の中に幸せを新しく生み出すということなの。それが原初の魔法。
私は今の自分の世界を認めたくなかった。こんなにも孤独で辛い世界を肯定するのが許せなかった。だからマリアお姉ちゃんの世界に惹かれながらも最後の一戦で受け入れられなかった。
教えてあげる。マリアの原初の魔法を。いいえ、教えたことがあったはず。そしてあなたにも使えたはずなんだよ。忘れちゃった？エンジェだってマリアージュ・ソルシエールに名を連ねる魔女の見習いだったでしょ？
ええ、そうだったわね。マリアージュ・ソルシエール。懐かしいわね。私もそこに名を連ねていることがあったっけ。
Okay, cool.
Eh, あれは忘れもしない。1987年4月のことです。私は友人からある奇妙な依頼を受けました。とある大富豪の遺品である蔵書が大量に競売にかけられていて、その一部に民族学的にも考古学的にも、あるいはオカルト的な意味でも極めて価値の高いものが含まれていると思われる、その価値を内密に見てほしいというのです。
87年、六軒島での事件の半年後。
さようです。それらの蔵書は六軒島での難を逃れたものと説明されていました。それを島の所有者である後宮エバ氏が競売に出したというのです。
That's kind of suspicious. This was apparently a high-class restaurant. A middle-aged man was sitting across from Ange in a secluded and quiet seat. Amakusa could be seen there by the entrance. He was probably keeping a lookout for pursuers from the Sumidera family. The scholarly man across from Ange spoke politely, but with enthusiasm. He didn't lay a finger on the food in front of him, so you could tell how excited he was as he spoke fervently. He was a professor at a certain college and particularly well known as authority in Western folklore. However, among his life works, that was only a convenient exterior. His true life work was the study of occultism, Western magic, alchemy, and everything else to do with the occult, as well as demonology. In short, he was a person in the best position to understand the details of Kinzo's research.
まず蔵書を鑑定して分かったことは、後宮エバ氏には民族学的な教養は全くなく、そしてその蔵書の本来の持ち主である後宮金蔵氏は、日本で五子に入る悪魔学の権威であったことは間違いないということです。
April 1987. A major city antique shop obtained a large quantity of ancient documents that were thought to have had high historical value. They were entrusted to them by Ushiromiya Eva, who wanted them to be sold at an auction. At the time, it was thought that Ava, who had succeeded the Ushiromiya family and have all the wealth herself as the only survivor. However, at that point, not even half a year had passed since the accident, and others had not been missing long enough to be presumed dead, even under extraordinary circumstances. Because of that, Ava had supposedly been in a very tight spot financially, unable to even collect her family's life insurance. It seems she tried to sell everything of value. Interesting. I thought they could see that, so were no bodies left behind? And even the books kept in the place where she'd escaped harm in Kuadorian were used for this purpose. These old books, which would eventually be called the Ushiromiya Library, were later gathered from an antique shops by authorities in the field so that they could be appraised, and those authorities were astounded. They're probably priceless, huh?
少なくとも神秘学の見地から言えば、その発見が世界に与えた衝撃は司会文書発見にも匹敵するものでした。
Jesus.
後宮蔵書にはなんと1000年以上にもわたる間、その存在だけが知られているにもかかわらず、発見されていなかった数々の極めて重要な文献さえ含まれていたからです。
The many dreams of the occult, such as those represented by alchemy, always stirred an intense fascination in dilettantes. It is whispered that many magic books of great historical value, currently unknown to the public, might be in secret possession of the extremely wealthy lovers of the occult. I mean, that makes sense. Items such as Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, which are particularly among the dilettantes, are said to be a prime example of this. It is said that approximately 5,000 pages of these notebooks currently exist, and that over 10,000 have been lost. But some researchers believe a large part of the lost proportion may be monopolized by certain enthusiasts and members of the extremely rich. It is said that because of this, even now, dilettantes, I've only heard debutantes, dilettantes, who can't help but seek the spare no expense to search around for quietly hoarded away and unannounced notebooks. There's probably no doubting that Ushiromi Kinzo was himself one of those dilettantes. No one knows what Kinzo went through to obtain those, but there can be no mistake that he used his vast wealth freely, buying them from other rich people with the same hobby as him. Those books, which were so valuable that enthusiasts could never satisfy their desires to hoard them away, were discovered in large numbers at the end of the 20th century, and their release to the public had given the entire world a massive shock.
この一件により、六軒島の名は全世界に知れ渡ることになります。そして同時に、六軒島の事故によって、未発見のさらに価値ある蔵書が大量に失われた可能性が高いことも、全世界に衝撃を与えました。これにより、六軒島と後宮蔵書の名は、我々にとって生涯忘れないものとなったのです。
Our memories. That hour probably meant the occult neck of the woods in the same hobby as Kinzo. Because of that incident, the name Rokujima had taken on a vital meaning in the world of the occult. Which technically would give the witches more power, right? There certainly has been a lot of reporting about it, the accident on Rokujima itself, but not on an international level. However, this one part had spread across the world. Taking the image of Rokujima as a small island on the Izu archipelago and painting it over as a demonic island where riddle, suspension, mystery, and the occult met. In other words, until Kinzo's library was leaked to the public by Ava, Rokujima had merely been a nameless island that no one could remember. And certainly not the island of a witch. However, when knowledge of the Ushiromi library spread all over the planet, Rokujima's image immediately took on an occult twist.
そして、そこへ起こるのが例のメッセージボトル事件です。これがあの島を魔女の島に変えた。伊豆諸島の無名の小島がオカルトの島へ、そして謎の魔女ベアトリーチェの島へと変遷していったのです。後宮蔵書とメッセージボトル、このどちらが欠けても 六軒島魔女伝説は成り立たなかったと言えます。
メッセージボトル。
はい。空の瓶に手紙を封印し海に投じるという不特定対象への通信方法です。無人島から SOS を発信するというのが有名ですが、海外の有名推理小説の影響で、自らの死後に真実を告白するという時間差的な遺書としても知られるようになりました。六軒島メッセージボトル事件は、まさにこの後者だったのです。
近くの島の漁師が拾っていたというやつですね。
さようです。式根島の若い漁師が手紙入りのワインボトルを拾っていたことが分かったのです。この若い漁師は興味本位からそれをたまたま保管していました。それが後宮蔵書で六軒島が世界的注目を浴びたため公表したというのです。
その漁師による捏造の可能性は？
もちろんその可能性も否定できませんでした。ワインボトル内のノート片には後宮家のとある人物の署名がされていました。後宮マリアという少女です。しかし彼女の遺品の肉質から別人の筆跡であることが確認されました。
別人の筆跡？
さようです。少なくとも少女より達筆で年齢のある人物によって書かれたことは疑いようがないでしょう。彼女の名を語った何者かが執筆した可能性が極めて高かったのです。よって、この時点ではノート片の内容の信憑性は薄いと考えられました。
However, later on it was confirmed that a similar message bottle had been recovered from the nearby ocean on the day of the accident by the police in their search for lost articles, and this caused a sensation.
警察は現場の状況とボトルの封印状況から捏造の可能性は低く、事故直前の数日以内に投棄したものと判断したようです。また双方の筆跡は一致しました。これにより、漁師の発見したノート片の信憑性が増すこととなりました。メッセージボトルの内容については、週刊誌などが繰り返し報道しているようですが、説明がいりますかな？
いいえ、一応知っていますので。
Many scraps of paper had been stuffed into both of the wine bottles. It was an extensive notebook written by someone calling themselves Ushiromi Maria, but who wasn't Maria, and which told of the events starting the day before the accident and up until the day of the accident in a diary-like way. And its contents have been the beginning of the witch's legend serial murder incident, as well as the Golden Witch Beatrice's puzzle.
この奇妙な日記風式には、台風で島に釘付けにされた後宮家の親族たちが、魔女復活の儀式に巻き込まれ、次々に不可解な方法で殺されていく様子が記されていました。そして最後に、黄金の魔女、ベアトリーチェが蘇り、まるで、それこそが当日の全容であるかのように記されていました。
I wonder if it was actually Sakutara.
また、当時の島の状況についても非常に詳しく描写されており、後宮家に勤務したことがある元の使用人たちは、間違いなく内部に詳しい人間が書いたに違いないと証言しました。
そのおかしな幻想小説と後宮蔵書以降のオカルトブーム、そして結局は真相は闇の中という3つが合わさり、六軒島の魔女伝説。
さようです。すでに10年以上が経過した事件ですが、未だに世界のオカルトマニアの関心を集めています。
This guy's like all about this.
いや、むしろ時間を得て、ますますに神格化されたと言っていい。上陸禁止になっている六軒島に、密かに上陸しようというマニアも未だに多いとか、未だ未発見のメッセージボトルがあるのではないか。そしてあの日、
So people
あの
aren't
島で
allowed on
本
there
当は何があ
still?
ったのか。
I guess Ava probably owns it.
未だに議論はつきませんとも。
As though he finally remembered that he'd been going on and on for some time, the man took a gulp of water. His porridge was getting cold, but it seemed that the man's hunger had already been blown away.
確か、漁師のノート編と警察のノート編で内容が全く違うと聞きましたが。
さようです。このせいで、ロッキン島ミステリーはさらに面白みが増したのです。二つのボトルの中身は、どちらも事故前日から当日までを記した日記風の式です。しかしその内容は、共に前日から当日を記した内容であり、にもかかわらず、内容は全く異なったのです。まるでどちらかが真実で、どちらかが虚偽のように、あるいは両方とも虚偽なのかもしれない。しかし、始まりと終わりだけは一致するのです。始まりは、親族たち18人は台風で島に閉じ込められた。そして終わりは、全員が死に、黄金の魔女が蘇り、すべては黄金鏡に飲み込まれる。
The contents of both message bottles wrote about the events the day before the accident and the day of the accident, but the details were completely different. Both diaries outlined serial murders following the epitaph of the witch, but the order of sacrifices, the way they died, and even the tale of 2 days were different. However, in both, everyone died in the end, and the witch revived, making for the same general plot.
あの島で何があったのか。唯一の生存者である後宮エバ氏が沈黙していた以上、あの2日間の出来事は全てが闇の中です。この2つの日記はその闇を埋める仮説を、こともあろうか、2つも提示してみせたのです。
I feel like this guy's like tossed off to
ど
these
ちらの日
freaking
記でも
journals.
2日間を説明できる。しかし、どちらが正しいのか、あるいは正しいことが含まれているのかさえわからないのです。
Schrodinger's cat box. If it isn't denied, even a mixture of truth and fiction can be the truth. Through the media, these scraps of paper have been, of course, have been shown to Ava as well, but in the end, she never broke her silence.
誰が何のためにメッセージボトルを？
事件10周年特集を組んだ雑誌が以前大々的に取り上げたでしょう。あの仮説が今日では最も支持を集めているようです。しかし、面白みには欠ける。あの島であの日何が起こったのか、それを考えるのがウィッチハントの醍醐味なのですな。
ウィッチハント？
ああ、ロッキン島ウィッチハントとは、この事件の真相をオカルトの側面から説明しようと試みるマニアの集いのことです。
And that's basically how we've been seeing the first three,
後宮蔵書から謎の2日間。そして、黄金の魔女の伝説など、ロッケン島に関わる謎は今でもマニアの間で盛んに議論されているのです。10周年の時には、ニューヨークで国際コンベンションも開かれました。私も日本の代表として参加してきましてね、海外の熱心なウィッチハンターと様々な交流をしてきましたよ。海外では魔女はとても人気のあるカテゴリーでしてね。参加者の年齢幅も、下は小学生から、上は著名な文化人まで実に幅広い。日本でも近年ようやく、
You probably don't need any more explanation, but he's one of the most famous Rokujima witch hunters in Japan. Even though I didn't ask anymore, he kept continuing on, all excitedly by himself. As I swirled the thin film of my porridge with my spoon, I shrugged my shoulders and sighed. Looks like researching about the message bottle really was a waste of time. No, if there's one thing I've found, it's that the notebook supposedly written by Maria was actually written by a different person faking her name. And the person wrote up an occult legend on their own, putting it into the bottle as though it was the truth and threw it into the sea. I have a question. Why would they go to all the trouble of writing so much in order to prepare a suspicious letter like that? With a message bottle, there'd be no guarantee it'd ever pass into anyone's hands. If their luck had been bad, it could have sunk in the ocean, never to be seen by anyone. And even if someone had picked it up, they might have not cared about it and thrown it away. Why would they entrust their confession of the truth to the sea with such an uncertain method? And why would they write up multiple different tales? If there had been one message bottle claiming its story was the truth, might be reckless, but not impossible. However, because there were two, that made both of them doubtful. If someone was plotting to make out those 2 days to be the work of a witch, they really did go one step too far. And because there were two, it suggests that an undiscovered third one, or possibly even more, might exist. In other words, two different contents make both of them harder and harder to swallow. But despite that, contents of both match in that they told of a witch in the tale. So is the main point the writer wanted to get across to us? It seemed to me that the only possible explanation is that someone who wanted to give rise to an illusion of a witch carried out this crime for their own enjoyment. However, 17 people other than Aunt Ava lost their lives, and a vast wealth, or maybe even 10 tons of gold, have moved around secretly in the darkness. It doesn't feel right for a confession occurring after all that to bring up an illusion of the witch. Even if we ignore the magazine's theories, it is very doubtful that the message bottle really was a diary. After all, the amount of writing was massive. It's hard to imagine that someone actually caught up in the middle of serial murder like that would be able to calmly write it down. Maria would be able to do that. In that case, it's probably more realistic that this diary was written slowly over a long period of time, up until the day prior to the accident. In that case, would it mean everything on Rokujima was a planned crime with everything prepared for over a long stretch of time? The fact that Aunt Ava left this world without saying anything is infuriating. She definitely said it on her deathbed. Definitely said that her reason for not telling me the truth was because it was her best way of harassing me. Yeah, by now, it's painfully obvious. Of all the things Aunt Ava did to harass me, this is probably the last and the greatest. But thinking of it this way, it's pretty doubtful that Aunt Ava is a true culprit. Of course, it's not because the handwriting on the message bottle was different from Aunt Ava's or anything like that. It's because both tales that were discovered, Aunt Ava was included among the victims. So it's the first two. If the writer of that diary was a culprit, maybe Aunt Ava was also be one of the targets. Maybe Aunt Ava survived because something went wrong. Because I hated Aunt Ava, I came to believe that she was the one who had been the culprit. But the existence of the message bottle makes me suspect that the mastermind is far more profound and unknown person than her. Maybe. I looked at the clock. I've heard more than enough. It's time. As he continued to speak fervently, I suggested that I wanted to bring this discussion to a close. He seemed to be aware that he got excited and talked too much, so he quickly accepted this.
今日は本当にありがとうございました。貴重なお話が聞けたと思います。
いえいえ、ウィッチハントの新しい仲間に若いお嬢さんを迎えできて本当に楽しかったです。今日は歌詞を変えてしまったのでお見せできなかった貴重な資料がいくつもあります。次の機会の時にはぜひそれをお見せしましょう。
ありがとう先生。最後に聞いてもいいですか？
はい、何でしょうか。
先生はどうして魔女に、いえ、神秘学や悪魔学に興味を？
それを言われるとお恥ずかしい。不思議な力が使えたなら、意地悪なガキ大将にも負けないのに。という子供の頃の妄想が、そのままライフワークになってしまっただけです。未知なる力への憧れというプリミティブな願望は、今も昔も普遍的ですからな。
先生は、なれるものなら魔女になりたいですか？思うがままに魔法を使ってみたいという夢を、今も？
もちろんですとも、この年になり、そういうものが実在しないと理屈では分かっていても、 それでもなお、空を飛んでみたい。鉄靴を黄金に変えてみたいという子供の学生たちにはどうか内密に。
私が、実は魔女だと言ったら、お信じになります？
女は魔女である。というのが、私のささやかな女性経験からの持論です。
Oh. Ange snorted at the old professor who must have been an earnest scholar with barely any experience with women. That is...
そうそう。最後にもう一つだけ質問を。先生は、メッセージボトルの実物をご覧になったことは？
ありますとも。
では、その筆跡についてもお詳しいですか？
もちろん。その道の専門家ではありませんが、メッセージボトルの筆跡に関してだけは、日本で最も詳しいと自負していますとも。
Oh. At that point, Ange set a book on the desk with a thud.
これは初めて見るものです。
He prided himself on his thorough knowledge of all literature related to Rokujima, and he looked bewildered at this binding he had never seen before. Ignoring him, Ange silently flipped through the pages and opened one of them and showed him. On that page was a handwritten paragraph beginning with, "To my beloved witch apprentice." At the end, there was a signature in katakana that said Beatrice.
それは。
The instant he glanced at it, his face went pale. She knew the answer before asking, but Ange asked it aloud anyways.
このページに記されている文章の筆跡は、メッセージボトルの筆跡と一致しますか？
いや、持ち帰って詳しく調べないことには。どこで？
The man stretched out his hand, but Ange pulled it back, as though telling him not to touch it with his filthy hands.
ありがとう。その反応だけで結構です。今日はありがとうございました。これ、お約束の謝礼です。
As she stood up clutching Maria's diary, Ange carelessly tossed a wad of 10,000 yen notes wrapped in a strip of paper onto the table. As Ange turned her back to him and made to leave, the man raised his voice as though clinging to her, but Ange didn't stop walking.
お願いだ。その本は一体。謝礼はいらない。その本を見せてくれ。
私とあなたはウィッチハントの同志だけど、求める深さが違うみたい。
Damn.
あなたが楽しんでるのは猫箱の外側。そして私が知りたいのは猫箱の内側。そしてこの一冊は、その猫箱を開く鍵ね。あなたには過ぎてるわ。じゃあね。Goodbye, gentlemen. Have a nice day.
待ってくれ！スマレラさん！
His voice didn't reach her. She had already joined up with Amakusa and gone into the car. So Beatrice was
収
writing
穫
those.
はありましたか？
最後の最後にね。やっぱりそうだった。メッセージボトルを記したのは、ベアトリーチェ本人だった。
そいつはクールだ。魔女は実在するで決着で？
さあね。寝ていい？あのおしゃべり教授。きっと講義では自分の世界に入っちゃって、寝ちゃう子続出だと思うわ。
どうぞどうぞ、お休みを。
しかし、うまくいくもんね。あいつ、私のこと、スマデラだと最後まで信じてたわ。
The Sumatera family had set up a web beforehand around any people Ange might try to contact. They had offered a reward to anyone who could take Ushiromiya Ange into custody if she appeared. Ange had foreseen that and had snatched away. She had called herself Sumadera, and after cleverly tricking the man by saying her own subordinates would set up an ambush so he didn't need to worry about it, she had taken him outside. So when the Sumidera family pursuers reached the professor's house, there was no longer anyone there.
家人の話では、午前中にスマデラを名乗る若い男女が訪れ、教授を連れ出したきり、まだ帰宅しないそうです。裏を書かれた可能性が。
いけない子ね、エンジェちゃんは。そういう悪知恵、姉さんの血なのかしらね。あんなに名乗るのは嫌だと言ってたスマデラの名を気安く名乗ってくれちゃうなんて。
I do not like this chick.
そのうち教授もお戻りになるだろうさ。そしたらソチャでも振る舞わないとね。
は了解しました。
私を手玉に取ったつもりかしら。やんちゃな子なんだから。
With a demonic look on her face, Kasumi violently stamped her heel. Hello? I'll teach you about my magic of origins. No, I taught you before, right? And you used it before. Did you forget? You were also a witch apprentice, Ange, with your name entered into marriage sorcery, weren't you?
私も魔女に加えてもらったんだっけ？
I closed Maria's diary and flopped down to my very high-class looking bed. I slept deeply for a long time in the car, so it took longer than usual for drowsiness to set in. And I read the diary as I waited. This was a super expensive hotel in the city. Since it was often used by the rich and famous, they were very big on confidentiality. That made it very convenient for Ange to escape her pursuers. The idea that renegades should spend their nights hiding in cheap hotels is a commoner way of thinking. To Ange, who possessed all the wealth of the Ushiromiya family, renegade life was comfortable indeed. Of course, even though he was a guard, Amakusa was a man and therefore in a separate room. Ange used the bathroom of the suite, and Amakusa lay on the sofa in the living room. According to Amakusa, the sofas were more pleasant than his own bed had been recently. Poor guy. When I looked at the clock, I saw there was almost 2 in the middle of the night. I'm still not getting sleepy. I sighed deeply. At that time, even though there was no wind, I had a feeling that Maria's diary fluttered. Then, One-chan appeared. Her form was no longer the normal one I'd known. She was wearing the dress that Beatrice had given her after her acknowledgement as a witch.
もう寝ないと明日が辛いよ。
私も魔女なら魔法が使えるのよね。
うん、使えるよ。教えてあげたでしょ。使い方。昔は使えたはずだよ。
覚えてる。使いたくなった。
寂しくなった？
別に。毎日枕が違うくらいのことで辛くなんてならないわ。
魔法の最初の一歩は寂しいからとか退屈だからとかそのくらいのささやかな理由でいいの。
眠くなるまでの暇つぶしだとしても。
うん。エンジがもう一度魔法のことを思い出してくれてマリアは嬉しい。
It's been quite a long time since I last used magic. At one point with Maria's introduction, I touched a corner of it and opened a door a tiny bit. So I should still remember that sensation.
今のエンジェはかなり魔法の力が衰えてる。基本に忠実じゃないと難しいよ。
うん。四方を確認。静かな空間を確保。
天草さんは？
寝てるわ。
After opening the door to the living room a crack, I could see that the blanket caterpillar on the sofa roll over in its sleep.
今のエンジェの弱い魔力では半魔法力の影響を受けすぎる。人の姿だけじゃない。声も音も 気配さえもエンジェの魔法の邪魔をする。それらを完璧に立って古代魔術師たちがアトリエを閉ざして孤独を守ったように。
What is she gonna do? Like sensory deprivation?
覚えてるわ。人間の存在自体が魔法を、故に人に魔法を見せるということそのものがとても高位な魔女の証だったわね。
Obtain a quiet space for yourself alone. That should be enough to prepare a space to use magic.
次によりしろ。今のエンジェには自転車の補助輪、いえチェーンくらい大事。
これは当然無理よね。
Ange rubbed her own head. She wore a hair accessory there, with pink gems attached. They felt a little childish for Ange, but she never took them off, not for even a single day.
今のエンジェにはとても無理。あの日から一日もあるいは今頃は呼び出すことができたかもしれないね。
今から修行したらどのくらいかかるの
1,000 years?
魔女の修行は幼き日の1年が老いの10年と同じ価値がある。相当の覚悟がいるよ。
それこそ後ろ宮金蔵くらいに。ピアノもバイオリンも魔法も幼い頃からの英才教育が大事なのね。
今のエンジェは初めて魔法を使えた時よりもその力が落ちている。無理をしないで基本に忠実に。
After severally rubbing those things on my head one more time, I gave up. Then I started fishing through the knapsack, looking for anything that might make a good vessel.
これならよりしろにはぴったりじゃない？
懐かしい。それならば今のエンジェでも召喚できると思うよ。それには今主がいない。エンジェが新しい主になるのも可能なはず。
Among the things that looked like good vessels, I took the one that I thought might possess the strongest magical power and set it on the table near the bed with a clatter. It was a shady-looking, stake-shaped weapon with an occult design inscribed on it. It was one of those 7 stakes of purgatory which the witch used to offer their sacrifices. When the police had been searching the family's possessions, they had collected a large amount of junk. After the investigation had finished, these had been politely returned to the Ushiromia family. Finding something that I'd seen in pictures of Maria's diary, I took it home with me.
煉獄の7杭はもともと7本で一揃いだった。気の毒にね。今はもう彼女1本だけ。
Oni-chan smiled, looking lonely. I pulled another book out of the knapsack. This was also old-fashioned, and you could tell that it was an occult book just by looking. But its contents were plain. It was one of Maria's elaborate notebooks. It wasn't a diary, but a grimoire which she had written as a witch. 7 stakes of purgatory are Beatrice's furniture, created by her and employed only for her sake. But since Beatrice is also a witch of the Mirage sorcery, they could be employed by Maria, a witch of the same alliance. For that reason, the method of summoning the stakes of purgatory and how to handle them was written in great detail in Maria's grimoire. And, as another person with their name registered in that alliance, I was also permitted to employ them.
この杭は7姉妹の誰？
マリアの魔導書に彼女らの特徴がよく記されてるよ。7杭の姉妹は名前を間違えられることをとても嫌う。召喚する前によく彼女らの名前を思い出して。
A packed page told the 7 sisters of purgatory. It described the 7 sisters in great detail. Yes, I think I memorized almost this entire page once in the past. The more I read it, the more I started to remember. By the pictures and characteristics written on the grimoire, I could tell that the stake in my hand was the Mammon stake. In the past, I hadn't had any stakes, so I'd summoned them without any vessel. So this is the first time I'd clearly seen any of the 7 stakes, let alone Mammon.
マモン、五女、7つの大罪の強欲を司る。 すごい子よね。
強欲は向上心、上昇志向、生きる強さなども司る。決して悪い意味だけではないんだよ。口は悪いけど、とても頑張り屋さんな子だし。
そうね。欲がないってことは、つまり、生きてる理由がないってことだし。
For a while, I heightened my concentration and digested the information that was written about Mama. The more the summoner knows about the targets that's being summoned, the better. Knowledge is connected to magical power. I began to fill my head with knowledge of Mama, raising a necessary amount of magical power for summoning.
魔導書って、ちょっとだけ面白いわね。下手くそな小説を読むより、よっぽど面白いかもしれない。なんだか懐かしい気持ちになるわ。
魔導書は、ただ文字を読み取るだけじゃなく、行間から世界を膨らませたり、挿絵から世界を生み出したりと、様々な想像を要求されるの。生み出す力。これを持つエンジェになら、どんな本よりも魔導書は面白いはずだよ。エンジェになら理解できるって、マリアはずっと知ってたもの。
マモンの知識、これで十分だと思うわ。うん。だいたい蘇った。やってみる。
しっかりね。いざという時に備えて、私の護符を。今の君は、同盟の条約に守られてない。マモンは少し喧嘩っ早いところがある子、あるいは、まだ恨んでるかも。注意して。
うん。身につけることにする。
The seven stakes of purgatory as furniture used to make sacrifices for a ceremony were created as beings inferior even to weapons. But that was only when compared to other demons. To humans, furniture is something to be feared. I fished through the knapsack again, took out the bracelet charm with a scorpion medal that I got from Maria a long time ago and put it on my arm. In the past, I hadn't needed something like this, but I needed assurance.
大丈夫。それにはまだ十分な魔法防御が備わってる。それを身につけている限り絶対に大丈夫。
Maria's magic power, which had been specially put into this charm, had been enough to earn even Beatrice's admiration. While it may have looked like something cheap to a human who couldn't understand magic, its magical worth was incalculable.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。強欲のマモン。
I focused my mind. I made the magic repellent toxin that filled my body 0. Imagine an untainted vast space. Doubts and common sense all resist magic. Make the resistance 0 and erase the burden on magical power. Inside my head was the image of vast space. It was nighttime. It was a nighttime world where I floated in the air and neon stars over the ground sparkled. A world where the stars should have covered the sky were wiped away by the light from below that covered the ground. In a world of vast night sky with no obstructions, I imagined the wind blowing through at will. At that time, in a room where there shouldn't have been any wind, the free nighttime wind kicked up a cyclone. The long-forgotten sensation raced through my entire body. It was a unique feeling of exultation that comes from using magic. Mama's stake, which I held out in my hand, gradually began to make me feel a pale light. A twisting cyclone with a stake at the center. The hefty stake floated in a bit into the air.
見事だよ。ブランクは君から才能を奪わなかったね。
さあさあ、おいでなさい。罪を許しなす。煉獄の七杭が一つ。強欲のマモン。その姿を私に見せなさい。
After I raised my hands bit by bit, lifting them higher than my head, as though it was being attracted upwards, Mama's stake once again floated up into the air, gradually began to shake. That shaking began to grow faster, and it burst. With a speed faster than I could follow, it flew around, violently rebounding off the walls of the room. The terrible sound of it dancing around threatened to make me flinch. However, I must not lose my mental concentration. Then the stake, which had been flying around at incredible speed, finally stopped and faced me. It was in the air, just a few centimeters away from my forehead, and held back by the defensive barrier created by the scorpion charm. It had tried to break the defensive barrier, eating into it with an incredible power, but Maria's barrier wouldn't be broken so easily. The stake muttered hatefully. It was probably safe to say that the scorpion charm saved me. Without that, my attempt at killing time until I got sleepy would have killed me for all eternity. When Mama's stake realized that it was unable to gouge me, and it gave up and grew docile, changing its form into a stake into a human. In that same old outfit I'd never been able to walk around outside in. Although you could say it suited her in some demonic sort of way.
エンジ様なの？随分とみすぼらしい魔力だけど、本当にエンジ様？
お久しぶりね、マモン。元気にしてた？
てっきり、もう約5面の家具は何度で朽ち果てるだけだと思ってました。それで、これはどういう影響で？まさか、私の所有者がエンジ様とでもおっしゃるつもりで？
うん。エンジが君の主人だよ。
マリア卿。これはお見苦しいところ。先ほどの結界は、マリア卿の？うん。
今のエンジじゃ、ひょっとしたら君にやられてしまうかもしれないって思ったから、ご符を貸したの。
マリア卿に、私の主人がエンジ様だと言われたんじゃ、断りようも、エンジ様？何なりとご命令を。私が必要とされるということは、新しい儀式を、新しい生贄を。もっとも、私を使いこなし、自らの手を汚す程度の覚悟が終わりならの話ですが。
その役割は、私はもう求めてないわ。昔同様に、ただ話し相手になってくれるだけで十分よ。
ええ。それがお望みでしたら、家具は、使われてこそ家具。お呼び出しいただいただけで光栄ですとも、エンジ様。
Mama had a slightly complicated smile on her face. She accepted her new master because Maria had told her to. But it looked like she hadn't gotten over her discontent at working for Ange with frail magical power. Perhaps she had some other reason for hating Ange, but for now it seemed that she couldn't disobey, even if she wasn't happy about it.
それで、私は何をすれば？
わからない。適当に賑やかにしてくれればいいわ。昔みたいに。
What, is she just gonna dance for you?
お言葉ですが、多分、エンジ様がおっしゃる賑やかさとは、私たち姉妹の騒ぎのことだと思います。私一人では難しいかと。お忘れで？
そうだね。七姉妹は、みんなが揃うと、本当に賑やかだったもんね。でも、今のエンジの魔力じゃ、マモンを呼び出すのが精一杯だと思う。他の6人の悔いも紛失してる。
恐れながらマリア卿、私の悔いを経由し、七姉妹に語りかけ、呼び出すことは不可能ではないかと。
Really?
私を刺激されるのでしたら、その程度の力は、エンジ様にはお持ちいただきたいところですが。
Mama grinned. The Apparently she wanted me to summon the other sisters without a vessel. I see. Since she's unable to satisfy herself being summoned alone, she's asking for the other sister to be summoned as well. I get it. Greed. Yes, she was like this back then, wasn't she? To furniture, the times during which they are used are bliss. No matter how badly they are exploited, being used is a furniture's joy. On the contrary, regardless of how nice you are to them, not being given a job is more painful than anything in their eyes. Mama spoke in a challenging way, but she wanted me to summon the other sisters somehow and rescue them from the world of nothingness. If that's the case, all she's got to do is say so. The demon people can never just say what they mean.
エンジ、無理しないで。マモンを呼び出せただけで、リハビリには十分だよ。
あら、一人だけでリハビリになっちゃうの？どうせ暇つぶしよ。いいわ、マモン。乗りかかった船だわ。呼べるところまで呼んであげる。
I don't think this is a good idea.
本当に？さすがエンジ様！さあさあ、早く早く！
Apparently, even though she'd asked, Mama hadn't really expected Ange to do this. She hopped around, badgering Ange to summon the other sisters. Summoning Mama alone consumed a considerable amount of physical and magical power. It'll probably be pretty tough to do 6 more. I'm awed by the magical power of those who can summon sisters like this with the snap of their fingers, and who therefore reach the level where they can be called witches.
マモン、エンジェに無理をさせないで。エンジェはまだ本調子じゃないから。エンジェ様はみんなを召喚してくれるって言いました？
Actually, I only said I'd call as many as I could. I guess that's greed for you.
無理しないで、エンジェ。もう今日は休んだ方がいい。君は十分疲れてるよ。
いいわよ。
Oh my god.
どうせ暇つぶし。ばったり寝込めるくらいに疲れさせてもらうわ。
This time there's no vessel. I'll have to strengthen the image from my knowledge of the grimoire and materialize them with just that. I held my hands out in the air, replaying in my head the sensation from when I'd summoned Mama. I acquainted with all the 7 sisters, right? I've got to remember that time long ago when I talked with them. This is not a good idea. Once again, the power of magic began to fill me up. I let off a faint, yet distinct pale light from both my hands.
エンジェ様、しっかりしっかり、頑張って。ねえ、マリア卿。エンジェ様は必ずみんなを呼び出してくださいますよね。また7姉妹は再会できますよね。ね。うん、きっとね。でも、それが今夜という保証はないよ。エンジェ様ならできますって。エンジェ様、お願い。末っ子のアスモから。
アスモデウス、7女。わかった。末っ子から順番に呼ぶわ。
A strand of hot sweat dripped down from my forehead. This is really going to be one hell of a burden to carry. The pale light in the space began to show the form of an outline of a girl.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。煉獄の7杭が一つ。色欲のアスモデウス。
There was no vessel, however, I held a strong conviction that she definitely did exist there as a core. Her form began to crystallize. Her outline became distinct, and then the form of the youngest 7 sisters, Asmodeus, was finally created.
色欲のアスモデウス。ここはどこ？私は生きてるの？アスモ！よかった！マモン姉さん、ここは一体、私を呼び出したのは誰なの？エンジェ様が、私たちをみんな、蘇らせてくれるって。
No, I didn't.
エンジェ様、ありがとう。次はベルゼをお願いします。
ベルゼブブ、6女。暴食のベルゼブブ。さあさあ、おいでなさい。
At this rate, I wonder how many I'll be able to summon. If I can't focus, this is probably it. The pale light made an outline and formed into Beelzebub.
黄色のベルゼブブ、ここに。ベルゼー！エンジェ様！すごいすごい！
Mama and Asmodeus jumped onto Beelzebub, celebrating their reunion. I'd summoned 3 people at once. My head was throbbing. Got to summon the next one without stopping for a break.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。怠惰のベルフェゴール。
怠惰のベルフェゴール、ここに。なんと、私がまだ必要。
ベルフェネー！お腹すいた！じゃなくて、また会えて嬉しい！また7姉妹みんなが再会。エンジェ様、本当にありがとうこの調子で、次はサタンネーオ、デビアネーモ、ルシネーモ。
ええ。
I don't think she'll be able to make it.
だからお願い。あまり4人同時は結構きつい。
エンジェ、もうそれ以上無理をしないで。これだけ久しぶりなのによく4人も召喚できたよ。
よせ、マモン。今のエンジェ様には我らの召喚は負担を強いている。エンジェ様、どうかご無理をなされませんよ。
私は嫌！エンジ様は約束し、また私たちみんなと遊んでくれるって。
Give the girl a break. No, I...
ねえ、エンジ様、みんなとまた会えるって、すぐに会えるって約束した。
そうね、約束したわ。すぐにがいつのこととは約束しなかったけど、確かに私は。
だから守って！じゃないと私は今日までそれを忘れていたエンジェ様を許さない。
So greedy.
さあさあ、煉獄の七杭が一つ。憤怒のサタン。
My mind's getting hazy, but I'll call. Even though I've forgotten about those days, even though I've never thought of that time as anything but sad and lonely, because the short time I spent with them was fun without a doubt.
憤怒のサタン、ここに。
何やってるのよ、あんたたち！私たちが井戸端会議をするだけでどれだけエンジェ様に負担をかけてるか分かってんの？
Satan, who apparently figured out the situation immediately after being summoned, cried out in a loud voice, telling her sisters off. That loud voice made my consciousness hazy again.
私たちはベアトリーチェ様より休むことを許された役目を終えた家具なのよ。再びお役に立てる機会を賜るどころか、新しい主人の負担になるなんて、そんなの家具の治れ！早く姿を消しなさい！
うん、サタン姉の言う通りだ。姿を消す。お前たちも姿を消せ。それがこの瞬間一番エンジェ様のお役に立てる。
私は嫌よ。みんなを呼び出してもらえるまでは嫌。私も嫌。お腹すいた。じゃなくて、やっと再開したばかりなのにもう帰るなんて嫌。
わがまま言ってんじゃないわよ。ほら、とっとと姿を消す。ほら、アスもさっさと消えなさい。
サタン姉さんがいじめた。いつも末っ子からなんてずるい。
退屈しない。
Is she gonna die?
もう十分だよ。今のエンジェには限界を超えてる。
そう。
With 5 of them summoned and messing around as they pleased, the load was far too heavy for me, and the meager magical power I had at the moment. This is it. As my consciousness went hazy, I fell over onto the bed. Have beds always felt this soft? It seemed that the sisters were still squabbling together as much as they liked, for a way to kill time until drowsiness comes to get me. This is enough. Feeling something warm and nostalgic in the sisters' liveliness, I sank in the world of deep sleep. At the entrance to my dream, I felt Maria and Sakataro waiting to receive me.
お疲れ様。そして、頑張ったね。ウリュウ、おかえり、エンジェ。
Welcome back, huh? Then I should respond like this. I'm home. Huh. That's right. Just once in the past I underwent training in order to steep into the world of witches. I accepted that the only power I could save me from those sad, painful days at St. Lucia Academy was the one thing called magic, and I received Maria's introduction to the basics.
広大な空間をイメージ。峠のドライブインから麓を見下ろした時の風景。こう
I project that scene from memory into my mental world. Normally, girls get over their fascination with magical girls when they leave elementary school. So seriously training to use magic at this age was embarrassing, even for me. But even that embarrassed feeling felt pleasant to me right now. Right then, I was learning mental concentration from Maria in order to use magic. But it wasn't going very well. It was about as hopeless as teaching a person to wiggle their ears by showing them. It seems you need to imagine a vast space to gain the mental concentration for using magic. So I remember the time from my younger days when my family had gone on a small vacation, when I had looked down towards the base from the viewing platform at a rest stop on its peak, and I tried painting the scene into my mental world.
まだまだ狭い。もっともっと広い空間をイメージして。そして、エンジェだけの新象世界を作り上げるの。まだまだイメージが霞んでる。空気に温度もないし、風もない。匂いもない。まだまだ世界が希薄。それらは後でもいいから、今はとにかくもっと広い世界をイメージして。ウリュウ。
I do like the plains in
どうして
Kansas.
広い空間のイメージが必要なの？人間の体内には生まれながらにして魔法を妨げる毒素があるんだよ。その毒素を浄化しないと魔法はうまく使えないの。そのために有効な方法の一つが広大な空間をイメージすることなんだよ。
さっきは飛行機の窓から見た世界を思い描いたけど、それもダメだったわ。もっと広大な世界なんて見当もつかない。
What about just the ocean?
マリアの持つ広大な世界をエンジェにも教えてあげればいいよ。そしたらエンジェにもイメージがしやすくなるんじゃない？
Probably has to be personal, right?
そうね。私もお姉ちゃんはどんな世界をイメージして魔法を使ってるのか、私もそれを参考にする。
ダメだよ。新象世界は広大で、そして孤独じゃないといけないの。自分以外に一切遮るものがない世界。だから、その世界を人に教えたら、その世界は孤独ではなくなってしまう。
Even like a desert.
だから、新象世界は誰にも明かしちゃダメなの。だからエンジェも上手に新象世界を描けたら、それは自分だ。ウリュウ、マリアケチンボ。
ありがとう。修行に近道なしってわけだわ。努力してみる。大丈夫。ヒントは十分もらえてるわ。
ウリュウ、エンジェ、頑張れ。
Until recently, I thought there was no way something like magic could save me. After all, magic doesn't exist in this world. That kind of thing is supposedly nothing more than an illusion, a delusion, a daydream. However, Maria showed me that she could fill her own world with happiness using a power that's impossible for me. I used to look down on that happiness as something empty. Because I didn't believe in magic, I also denied everything else, refusing to believe in the happiness that magic can give birth to. But slowly, bit by bit, Maria's world grew happier. In the past, I disparaged it, thinking it too pitiful to look at. But that might have been nothing more than jealousy. I was forced to admit that. And now, this was my first step in my search for happiness. A vast space, dry wind that could blow without being blocked by anything. Let me feel that wind blowing through my own hair. I see. Even the ground might get in my way as I am now. Then I don't need a ground. Brush the ground away, downwards, onwards. In other words, it was just as though I had floated up, leaving the ground far behind. After pushing the ground further and further downwards, the ground grew foggy and faint, and for the first time, it began to feel like the sky. Then I understood its vastness. In that instant, I felt vivid wind go through even my body, in other words, blowing through me without any resistance.
そう、その感覚を維持して。
ええ、わかる。すべての妨げから解放されてるのがわかる。
やったエンジェ、やったエンジェ、魔女の世界への最初の第一歩を踏み出した。
これが魔女の世界。
うん。じゃあエンジェがずっと望んできた魔法を練習してみよう。お友達を呼び出す魔法。エンジェを寂しさから救い出してくれる味方を作り、それによって幸せになる魔法を。エンジェにも僕みたいなお友達が呼び出せるの？うりゅうりゅう今のエンジェにはゼロの海からサクタロほどの友達を呼び出すにはまだ最初は呼び出しやすい友達から練習しよう。
最初は何を？
エンジェはマリアージュ・ソルシエールの魔女だから、同盟の魔女が刺激する存在はエンジェもまた刺激することが許されてる。
Can she do Rono?
例えばサクタロは私の友達だけど、同じ同盟のエンジェにとっても友達で、今度試しにサクタロを呼び出してみて。
Oh, that's cool.
寂しくて辛い時、サクタロがきっと元気づけてくれるよ。
I see. You can call Sakutaro a being employed by One-chan. So as a witch in the same alliance as her, it's possible for me to summon Sakutaro as well. I met Sakutaro's gaze. How pleasant it would be to just have him there to be my pillow, so he could talk to me a bit on lonely nights.
私が呼びかけたら、あなたは現れて、話し相手になってくれる？
うりゅう、エンジェが呼び出してくれるのを楽しみにしてる。うりゅうりゅうりゅう。
Looking happy, Sakutaro pressed his head against me like a cat. Suddenly getting a cute younger brother felt a bit confusing, a bit embarrassing, and a bit nice. Unable to understand why I couldn't honestly accept this feeling, I felt tears well up in my eyes.
お姉ちゃん、私頑張るわ。
じゃあ練習をしてみよう。同じ同盟の魔女ベアトリーチェの家具を呼び出してみよう。
ベアトリーチェの家具。
Hearing Beatrice's name gave me a slightly strange feeling. When it came to the crime on Rokunjima, the public kept going on and on in a frenzy about how it was a sacrifice ceremony performed by a witch. And that witch was Beatrice. So the witch did commit that crime. That would make her the culprit who stole my family from me. However, Maria said that Beatrice was a good witch. If I held negative emotions for Beatrice, she'd get mad, leading to a nasty fight, and refuse to talk for a while. At this moment, One-chan was my only close friend. So to avoid worsening her mood, I decided to think of Beatrice as nothing more than One-chan's magic teacher. Also, I believed that the crime was a conspiracy cooked up by Aunt Ava. I would definitely expose the truth about that someday.
エンジェ、また体内に妨げが混じってるよ。
ごめんなさい。集中を書いたわ。もう一度。
I'd expect no less from you, Ange-chan. You instantly noticed I was being overcome with idle thoughts. After shaking my head just once, I reimagined the wind blowing through a vast space.
煉獄の七姉妹。なんだか物騒な名前ね。
でも、とっても賑やかで楽しい子たちだよ。エンジェの新しいお友達になってくれるかもしれない。まずは、私が呼び出してみせるね。見てて。
Maria lifted both hands up to the level of her head and quietly unified her mind. The state wasn't able to reach except by meditating for... I wasn't able to reach except for meditating for a long period of time. She reached in the span of a quick few breaths. Then a pale light began to gather in her palms, and one by one, the girls began to show themselves. One, two, three people, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. The way they were summoned one after another in a line was a masterpiece. Incredible. Just like the illustrations in One-chan's grimoire, the Seven Sisters of Purgatory, the younger sisters were behind the eldest, Lucifer, who saluted One-chan.
煉獄の七姉妹、ここに。マリア卿、ご無沙汰を申し上げております。
久しぶりだね。みんなも元気？
我ら家具は、刺激されてこそ家具。久しぶりのお呼び出しを、心より光栄に思います。
お久しぶり。相変わらず美味しいじゃなかった。かわいい。私が一番。今日もふかふかプニプニしててかわいい。私にも抱かせて、私にも抱かせて。ウリュウ、苦しい。僕は逃げないから離してみんな。
こらあんたたちマリア卿の家具を壊す気？とにかく離れなさいよ。抱きしめるの禁止。
そう言ってるサタン姉が一番抱きしめたがってるよ。
私は別にあんなふかふかのプニプニのワフワフなんて興味ないんだから。
こらマリア卿とエンジェ様の御前よ。静かになさい、この愚昧ども。
They were so energetic, I was shocked by their sudden burst of activity right after they appeared. And on top of that, I was surprised that the innocent Sakataro was on such good terms with the Seven Sisters.
意外。サク太郎があんな物騒な連中にこんなに可愛がられてるなんて。
同じ同盟の仲間たちだもん。怖くなんかないよ。
でも、万が一彼女らの機嫌を損ねちゃったら、サク太郎、あっという間にやられちゃ
I
いそう。
think he's immune to any attacks by someone in the Alliance, right?
大丈夫。同盟の魔女とその家具はみんな仲良しなの。だからサク太郎も安心して遊べるの。それはもちろん、私やエンジェも同じだよ。
It was one of the pacts of the Mirage Sorcery. Mutual non-aggression and non-interference. Remember, witches must respect each other's magic and creations. Even the sisters were normally shady and belligerent, treated fellow Alliance members as friends. So, to the Seven Sisters, Sakataro was a mutual friend. He was loved by all of them, and they were trying to steal him away from each other. The scene as they squeezed him and loved him was a bit charming.
なるほど。マリアージュ・ソルシエールの仲間同士なのね。
At a glance, you'd think that Sakataro's casual atmosphere and the Seven Sisters' shady one would be like water and oil. It looked like they definitely wouldn't be compatible. And yet, they were interacting in a friendly way that was completely natural. If this wonderful alliance could join all peoples of this world together, I wonder if everyone in the world would be able to become friends right away.
七姉妹のみんな、聞いて。今、エンジェは魔法の修行中なの。だから、みんなの力を貸してほしいの。
かしこまりました、マリア卿。しかし、具体的には何を？
君たちを権限させる魔力を私からエンジェに移す。その状態でいつも彼女の身近にいてあげてほしいの。彼女の話し相手になったりしてあげるだけでいい。
恐れながら、エンジェ様の魔力では、私たち七姉妹すべてを四六時中呼び出し続けるのは容易なことではないかと。
The oldest sister Lucifer gazed at my complexion as she advises, speaking reservedly. In other words, she was saying that the burden might be too heavy for me at this point in time.
そういう修行なの。エンジェはみんなが想像しているより才能と魔力があるよ。ちょっぴり辛いかなとは思うけど、今のエンジェなら挑戦する価値はあると思う。エンジェ、今から彼女たちを権限させる魔力を君に切り替える。つまり、エンジェが呼び出したのと同じ状態になるの。
So what Maria was trying to say is something like this. To keep the Seven Sisters materialized, you are continuously burdened with a significant amount of magical power. Maybe you could say that it was like training while wearing a weighted wristband.
ウリュウ、七姉妹全員はかなり大変。エンジェ、
Yeah, doing all 7 of them at one time would be impressive.
ありがとう、サク太郎。やれるところまでやってみるわ。
The 7 of them certainly do seem boisterous. But even if this is for training, having them with me will surely distract me from my loneliness, at least a little. I understood it would be an ordeal and wanted to give it a shot.
もしも辛かったら無理をしないでね。みんなもエンジェが辛そうだったら加減してあげて。
Good
かし
luck
こまりました。
with that.
わかったね、あんたたち。
お姉様。
それではエンジェ様、これより我ら煉獄の七姉妹はエンジェ様の家具となります。マリア卿、お願いいたします。
うん。じゃあエンジェ、始めてもいい？
いいわ。ちょっと緊張する。
ウリュウ、いきなりは辛いかも。頭痛になりそうだったらすぐに魔力を減らしてね。じゃあ魔力ソースをエンジェに移すよ。
In an instant, the inside of my head felt very heavy. This is... yeah. It's tough. Until then, the inside of my head had only been used for myself. It was almost like it was now being used for 7 other people. If they just stood there and blinked once or let out a single sigh, that would put a strong pressure on my head.
マリア卿、恐れながら、やはり一度に七姉妹全員の負荷は重すぎるか。
大丈夫。
やっぱりダメかな。権限に全勢力を使っちゃってる。日常生活と両立できないほどの負荷じゃ意味がない。何しろ魔女としてこれじゃちょっと優雅じゃないね。ウリュウ、だからいきなりこんなに大勢は無理だって言った。みんな少し姿を消してあげて。
そうね、人数を減らした方が良さそう。アスモ、姿を消しなさい。
また私？末っ子いじめ反対。たまには上から消えてよ。
それじゃあ私が2番目に消えなきゃならない。やだ。アスマもレビアネーも騒がないの。そういう騒ぎが余計エンジェ様の負担になるのよ。
あんたが騒ぐのも負担になるのよ、バカサタン。
Seven sisters started arguing over who should erase themselves first. The energy from that fight became a burden, forcing Ange to bear even a greater headache. In the end, they decided the order with rock, paper, scissors, and 1, 2, 3 of them disappeared. But even at that level, Ange was still far from comfortable. In the end, once 6 of them had erased themselves, I was finally able to calm my breathing. With my magical power, forget the 7 sisters, just 1 person was my limit.
これじゃあ7姉妹じゃなくて、私一人じゃないですか。エンジ様、ちょっと頼りないです。
Mamon, who had won all the rock, paper, scissors matches and was permitted to remain in the end, grumbled.
ウリュウ、マモン、そんなこと言っちゃダメ。エンジェはまだまだ修行中。大丈夫、エンジェ。頭痛、大丈夫
Sector stretched up to his tiptoes, trying to pat Ange's head. Watching this, Maria scratched her own head, acknowledging that this sudden training had been too difficult.
ちょっと荒行すぎたかな。マリア、これくらいなら全然平気だけど。
Yeah, no shit.
友達いっぱいいればいるほど楽しいし。
お姉ちゃんの凄さを改めて思い知るわ。
Apparently, when one reaches Maria's class, one can summon enough people to perform an orchestra. For a witch apprentice, that's awe-inspiring.
大丈夫ですか、エンジ様。
ごめんなさいね。私にはあなた一人を呼び出すのがやっとみたい。
まあ、私はこれでもいいかな。だって7姉妹で私だけがエンジ様の家具を独り占めだし。いかがですか、エンジ様。私一人なら不可にはなりませんか。
ええ、あなた一人ならなんとかね。
よかった。そしていつかきっと7姉妹で揃ってお仕えさせてください。約束ですよ。
After confirming that, for the time being, her own materialization wasn't causing any issues, Mamon immediately became cheery again and tried to make a promise to work harder. I see that definitely fits with her being greed. But maybe you could also call it with having a positive attitude.
ええ、約束するわ。そのくらいはいつかできなくちゃね。
ありがとう、エンジ様。この強欲のマモン、その日まで必ずエンジ様にお仕えします。
My headache finally abated, and I relaxed both hands, which had been clutching at my head. Then Mamon stuck out her hand, helping me stand back up.
ウリュウ。あ、マリア、エンジ、もうこんな時間だよ。もう部屋に戻らないと叱られる。
I hadn't expected Sakataro to talk about the time. I was brought back into reality. As though the light had disappeared, the vast world sunk into darkness, and I was in a tiny, tiny bathroom stall sitting on the toilet. One-chan's grimoire was open on my lap. I looked at the clock. It was almost, what is that? 8 p.m., time for lights out. If I showed up late for the roll call before lights out, not only will things get pretty annoying, but it'll cause trouble for my roommates and floor mates. I couldn't care less about causing them trouble, but I don't want to be them messing with me later. My free time by myself is already over for today. I'll sleep, wake up tomorrow will begin, and another long, long gray-colored day will repeat again. I closed the grimoire and rose up from the toilet seat. At that time, Oniye-chan appeared again and spoke.
ほら、エンジェ、修行を忘れてるよ。マモンを連れて行って。
I'd forgotten. The moment I returned to reality, Mamon's materialization had stopped. One more time I created a strong image of the existence of Mamon in my mind.
もう、エンジ様ったらひどい。いきなり私を消すなんて。そんなんじゃ、7姉妹を全員呼ぶなんて、なかなかできませんよ。
ごめんなさい。うっかりしてたわ。
人間界に権限するのはすごい久しぶりなので、何から何まで興味深いです。 ちょっぴりワクワクしてます。ここはどこですか？
聖ルチーア学園の寮。ここはその共用トイレの個室。各部屋にトイレはあるから、ここには誰も来ない。静かで、本を読むにはちょうどいいの。
ここの寮は本を読むにも、トイレの個室に隠れなきゃならないの？文書でもやってるんですか？
That is a great question. I have a two-person room, so my roommate is always there. Our relationship is groomy and it feels like I'm always getting ignored. The atmosphere is bad, so I can't really relax there. And as long as I'm not there, she can do what she likes, call her friends over and chat away. It's more convenient for them too if I don't return until just before lights out. There's also a library, but there's a group that uses it as a meeting place and they're always talking behind my back. So I don't really like to go there. During lunch, it's the bushes behind the school building. During the night, it's the stalls in the shared bathroom in the dorms. Those are the only hideaways where I can find peace. That's super freaking depressing. I opened the door to the stall and went out. I turned around, signaling with my eyes for Mama to come with me.
よくわからないけれど、エンジ様にとってとても快適とは言い難い場所だってことが分かったわ。早く表に出ましょう。ここの空気、
Yeah, it
嫌
probably
い。
smells like shit.
そう、ここの空気が一番まともなんだけどね。
When I left the bathroom and entered the corridor, because it was near lights out time, several kids who had gone to play in other rooms were dashing back to their own. When it came time for lights out, we had to change into uniform pajamas that we hated and called prison clothes, line up in the hallway and go through the dorm leader's roll call. On the off chance someone was late, we would take the collective responsibility and all of the floor mates would have to undergo punishment in the form of volunteer work. So as long as I avoided this, the girls would look at me coldly, but they wouldn't get in my way. That alone was enough for me. Mama looked at the passing kids and the furnishings of the dorm with interest. Without paying her any particular attention, I hurried back to my room. In front of my room was my roommate, who had already changed into her prison clothes, chatting with some kids from the room next door. When they noticed me hurrying back, the topic of their conversation noticeably changed. They lowered their voices, stealing glances at me. I acted like I didn't notice, went into my room and changed. Then I hastily went out in the corridor. Everyone was already lined up.
何これ？ここってお嬢様学校じゃないの？刑務所みたい。バカみたい。
やっぱりそうよね。私もそう思ってるわ。刑務所よりさらに厳しい点は、素行が良くても刑期が短くならない点かしら。
After bad-mouthing the place, I noticed something. Having someone listen to your complaints feels surprisingly good. Fortunately, Mamon's form can only be seen by her summon or me. And of course, there was no need to speak aloud for this conversation. All I had to do was speak inside my mind and no one could listen in. Oh, that's pretty useful. Magic and the friends it creates. Might actually not be so bad.
こいつら、揃いも揃ってもやしみたい。生きてないって感じ。
やめなさいよ。毎日姿を見られたら大変よ。
夢も希望もかけらほどもない人間なんて、半魔法の塊だもの。私の姿なんて、絶対に見えるわけがない。見ることもできない、下等生物どもが。
あなたは、その半魔法の毒素を持つ人間たちが、これほどいる中でも平気。
エンジェ様が、私を権限させてくださる限りは平気です。ただ、私を権限するために、常に集中しなければならないでしょうから。ほら、同室の子に呼ばれてません？
後宮さん、聞こえてる？来週からの終盤なんだけどさ、ちょっと相談があって。
She's probably trying to push a few more chores onto me. My roommate, who never even looked me in the eye normally, was smiling at me unpleasantly. But it'll be easier to have week duty pushed onto me alone, rather than doing it together with her. There's a small price to pay to have her continue ignoring me nonstop. Even so, with a shameless excuse, she sidestepped the issue for some reason and insisted on flipping the situation around, as though I should have come forward and done it of my own initiative. One of the special traits of this academy is that it's full of girls who don't know how to ask a favor.
何この子、ムカつく。眉間に思いっきり私の悔いをねじ込ん。
そうね。ぜひ今度お願いするわ。
Yeah, having a friend nearby all the time to complain to makes me happier than I thought it would. It was really lively with all the seven sisters gathered together. I'm sure just watching them mess around will be a lot of fun. I want to gain enough magical power to summon all of the seven sisters at once, and soon. So I'll train much, much more. And finally summon the thing I really want to find.
エンジ様が本当に召喚したいものって何ですか?
Mama noticed my conversation with myself inside my head and asked about it blankly. I hesitated to talk about it, but then I figured there was no reason to hide it and told her.
家族よ。お父さん、お母さん、お兄ちゃん。
それってつまり、死者の魂？異界の住人を呼び出すのは召喚だけど、死者の魂を呼び戻すのは反言で、それは全くの別物。反言は、かなりの大魔法のはずですよ。
I know. So much so that even Maria can't do it at all. But that's the thing I want to find with magic the most. I've been warned that it's very difficult, high-level magic. So great that in the worst case I might not necessarily reach that point even after training my whole life. Furthermore, I have no vessel. A vessel is vital for making magic succeed, whether it's summoning or resurrection. Because I don't have that, a magic would already have been difficult is now hopeless. That's right. I have nothing to remember Dad or Mom by. However, by an extraordinary coincidence, I do have something to remember just Oni-chan by. And that's this.
そのピンクの玉の頭飾り？何それ？言っちゃ悪いけど、エンジェ様にはちょっと安物っぽい。
昔、お父さんに内緒でお母さんと一緒にお兄ちゃんに会って、遊園地に遊びに行ったことがあるの。そこのクレーンゲームの景品。
I know it's cheap. I realize that it doesn't match my style, and I know it's too childish. But this hair accessory is the only thing that makes me feel as though Battler is by my side. The glass case had been filled with plastic capsules filled with fun-looking things. It seemed that each capsule had some cute accessory in it. The game was to grab those with the crane, but I was young and it was too hard for me. I tried several times, but I couldn't even get close. Mom said that whatever was inside was probably cheap anyways, and we didn't even know what we'd get. So there was no point in getting all upset over it. But whether it was something cheap or not wasn't the problem. The process of grabbing happiness with my own hands felt really important and sacred to me. So I wanted the cheap thing inside more than anything. Then, Battler came over, finishing a game of shooting soldiers with a gun, and tried to do it for me. With his arms that were longer than mine, Oni-chan grasped the happiness that I couldn't reach. Oni-chan was coordinated. It seemed that he often plays with his friends at the arcades. After only one or two attempts, he grasped that thing on the other side of the glass with the crane I hadn't even been able to touch, and then threw it into the exit chute. When Oni-chan tossed me that capsule, I remember that he looked very, very reliable. For several days I felt like opening that capsule would be a waste, but then one day I finally opened it up, and what revealed itself inside was a pink jeweled hair accessory. Since that day, it's been a symbol for Oni-chan. Since I was young, I felt that having all four of us gathered, including Battler, was a precondition for a happy family, so I wanted Oni-chan and Dad to make up quickly. In my own way, I treated this hair accessory as a charm for bringing my whole family together. So I always used to wear it. I wanted to feel my reliable, fun, and wonderful Oni-chan by my side all the time, and let him live in our house.
でも、お兄ちゃんの記憶はあまりに遠い。マリアお姉ちゃんがライオンのぬいぐるみからサクタラを生み出したようには簡単にできない。私は死者の魂を蘇らせる大魔法をいつか必ず身につける。 そして、それを成功させられる唯一の鍵が、よりしろが、これなの。
なるほど。その頭飾りに、ものすごい魔力を感じてたけど、そういうわけなのね。
魔力？お兄ちゃんのこれに魔力が宿ってるの？
エンジ様が宿らせている。と言うべきかもね。エンジ様の兄を呼び出したいという強い思いが魔力を与えている。確かに、反言は大魔法だけど、エンジ様はその魔法のために無意識のうちに着実に階段を登っているのは間違いない。
嬉しいわ。私以外の人にそれを認めてもらえるのは。
Your own effort isn't something that you can observe by yourself. In that sense, even though these words came from a shady demon girl who controls one of the 7 deadly sins, they made me very, very happy.
反言の魔法に至るのと寿命を全うするの。でも、挑む山の高さが高ければ高いほど、魔女としての力も比例していく。エンジ様はくじけることがなかったなら、きっといつか私たちの元の主、ベアトリーチェ様に匹敵するほどの大魔女になれると思います。
なれるかしら。大魔女になってお兄ちゃんを。家族を蘇らせることができるかしら。
反言の魔女、エンジェ教。素敵！反言の魔女はかなりレアな魔女です。そんな魔女がご主人様なんて、ちょっとっていうか、むしろそうなってほしいものです。家具の価値も主の格に比例しますので。もうベアトリーチェ様さえ抜いちゃって、天下無双の大魔女になってくださいね。煉獄の7姉妹を代表して、心より応援申し上げます。
I thought that a magical friend were appear for me. A cute kid like Sakatoro would be best. But even this fifth sister of the shady 7 sisters, who controlled the 7 deadly sins, was enough to calm my heart so much all by herself. Maria had probably known that since long ago. That's why she'd recommend the world of witches to me over and over again. And I kept stubbornly rejecting her. I should have given in and started my training as a witch sooner. A year for a child is worth 10 years as an old person, right? Now I find my past self, which only ever complained, deplorable for wasting my precious time. Long after I turned off the lights and slipped into bed, Mama continued to talk alongside my pillow. I promise, one day for sure I'll develop magical power that can summon the 7 sisters, and I'll let them have a lively fun time. Then the 7 of them make a single whole. None can be left out. Family must be together. I must bring them together. My awareness began to return slowly. Unable to stand watching Aunt Rosa and Maria's relationship, I ran away from Beto and Oni-chan's game, didn't I? I've got to go back. I've got to go back and support Oni-chan. Quickly bring him back from his strange world of the witch's game. After all, as long as I'm here, I'm not allowed to call myself Ange. Okay, I'm going to stop and save here. Yeah, we're just learning so much about Ange and kind of getting into like her life and seeing like what has made her tick and kind of, I mean, she's just lived in like seclusion basically her whole life, which is really shitty. And I mean, imagine getting like raised by like her, first of all, her whole family gets like killed. Sucks. And then she's raised by someone who despises her, which is horrible, and sends her off to this school where she's basically like ignored and bullied the whole time. It's just horrible. So yeah, I have a strong feeling we're gonna see more and more of how shitty it is for Ange, and it's gonna suck. So, but yeah, I thought this was a good chapter. And yeah, I'm excited and also worried about where we're going to go from here. So yeah, guys, let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments below.